Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from Anthony Yarde, who says, Buatsi, better beef, Bivol, I want the biggest fights. Anthony Yarde returns as Adam Azim fights O'Hara Davies at the Copper Box Arena this Saturday, live on Sky Sports, Peacock, in the United States. He's eyeing a third title shot and a fight with Joshua Buatsi. A rematch with Artur Beterbiev or even Dmitry Bivol as he looks to finally become a light heavyweight world champion. He would welcome a showdown with Buatsi next after his own fight this Saturday against Ralph's The Train Vilcans, live on Sky. For those not aware, Anthony has already fought 2 times since being stopped by Artur Beterbiev. This will be his third fight. Third keep busy fight, third maintenance fight. The last 2 were under the Queensberry Promotions banner. This one's under Boxer. You know the story. My career is not based on an individual, but I've said it. I want the biggest fights. That's Joshua Buatsi, that's Beterbiev 2, that's Bivol, that's anyone at light heavyweight that's a big fight. Those are the fights I want to be involved in, Yarde declared. The Londoner has twice challenged for world titles, losing to Sergey Kovalev in Russia and Beterbiev in London. Can't say he's squirrely. Making the decision to travel to Chelyabinsk, Russia, to challenge then WBO champion Sergey Kovalev for that title showed real moxie, real bollocks. Bottle, as the Brits like to say. Then fighting the beast from the east, Artur Beterbiev, in what was a spirited contest, but there has been a shift in the light heavyweight division that I'm not sure everyone is aware of, and it's that the future of this division is in the UK, that most of the money, the big money, is gonna be over there. Most of it. It's great to see Anthony Yarde back in the ring. We don't have many stars that can capture the imagination of mainstream sports fans, and Anthony Yarde is one of them, Shalom said. Gee, you'd almost think he's promoting the guy the way he's talking. Don't tell Frank. He'll want to put on a massive, massive performance. We know what fights are beyond this one. We know the big nights to come. Now, obviously, we'd love that Buatsi Yarde fight. That's the fight that the fans want to see. I know that's the fight they've been calling for, but until it's made, it's not made. Josh has just won the WBO interim title, so it can be for that title as well. Yarde wants to fight for another world title. He wants to become a world champion. He needs to put on a performance this Saturday. The event coordinators, the matchmakers, the people that put this fight together for Anthony, put it together with the Joshua Buatsi fight in mind. They're not stupid. So even if you're not familiar with the guy that Anthony's fighting this Saturday, and I'm not either, that's what you need to know. They would have put that fight together for Anthony with the Buatsi fight in mind. That being said, they're not going to throw caution to the wind and jeopardize one of the bigger fights you can put on British soil. That's what it's all about. Yarde cannot afford to slip up against Vilcans on the Adam Azim versus O'Hara Davies undercard. I take this fight as if it's a world title fight. I don't take no opponent lightly, the Briton said. He's in the top 15 with the WBA, decent record. I'm going out there 100% trying to do what I do, entertain the fans, win by knockout. He likely will. This fight has been a hot-button topic to us Brits for a number of years now.
God save the king.
It almost feels like yesterday that Anthony Yarde was being lambasted for what was being then described as soft matchmaking. Time, over time, has told a different story, that Anthony's the ballsy one, that Anthony's the ambitious one. He's already tried to become a world champion 2 times against 2 very dangerous opponents, where Joshua Buatsi, the standout amateur, the guy with all the pedigree, the Olympian, is the best guy that Joshua Buatsi fought. Best guy that he beat, Ricard Bolotniks? Dan Aziz? Because, usually, it's the guys like Joshua Buatsi in the paid ranks that are brought along quick on the premise of all their amateur experience, but not that guy. Joshua Buatsi's got decent physical dimensions for a light heavyweight. He's got a bit of height, a bit of length, good snap on the jab, and a strong right hand.
Not the flashiest.
And I still have questions about this fighter because of who he's fought so far, or who he hasn't.
That's more like it.
Anthony would be the biggest puncher, I think. He would be the biggest puncher that Joshua Buatsi will have ever fought. This would be his biggest acid test.
And his biggest money fight.
So far. And I feel like the victory for Joshua Buatsi is contingent upon his ability to control Anthony Yarde with the jab.
That's how Sergey Kovalev beat him.
With the jab.
That's how he knocked him out. That's how Lyndon Arthur beat him.
With the jab.
On the fly, on the move, boxing from the outside. I think that's what Joshua Buatsi's gonna have to do.
I don't think he's as strong a puncher as Anthony Yarde, or as fluid as Anthony mid-range to inside, so the victory for Joshua is keeping him on the outside, at arm's length.
Controlling him.
I don't really know if he can. I know he's got the deep amateur background and all of that stuff, but when I saw him fighting Dan Aziz, he didn't impress me.
The more recent Willie Hutchinson fight, that didn't really impress me either. And I picked him to win that fight, he did.
But he didn't impress me. Hasn't really been chin-checked by a puncher, and I have my reservations about his engine, his gas tank. I feel like he should be throwing more, but he doesn't.
Suspect engine?
Doesn't want to take chances because of a suspect chin? Could be that way.
Could be.
Joshua Buatsi is still an unbeaten fighter. Anthony Yarde is not. He's been around the block. He's won some fights. He's lost some fights.
You know.
No O to protect. Does that make him less dangerous or more dangerous? Ben Whitaker.
Undefeated fighter.
Liam Cameron. Not an undefeated fighter. What did he have? About 6 losses? But he was getting the best of Ben in there, wasn't he?
He was.
Buatsi versus Yarde. That's a pay-per-view in the UK, not in the United States, I figure. They'll show it on Peacock.
It's where boxer fights are shown in America.
I still find it strange that NBC's streaming platform, Peacock, decided to pick up the rights to British fights without anything else.
Some other kind of programming, some other kind of boxing to complement the boxer shows?
It just seems random. Arbitrary. But if you want to watch a boxer show and you're in America, that's where you watch it.
It's where you can watch this weekend's card, headlined by Adam Azim and O'Hara Davies.
That was caused by a vicious punch. We'll look at what the glove situation was there. I won't get too much into it, but there was a lot of talk during the week as to the gloves that were being worn by Fabio Wardley. The doctor said to me, there's no way in hell any boxing glove should be able to have that level of damage. But it was a clinical end to the fight by Fabio Wardley. But as I say, anything can happen in heavyweight boxing. Fraser will learn for it, and he's got a massive career ahead.
And you mentioned the glove situation there. So is that something, are the gloves themselves going to be looked at and reviewed? Is that something that you've asked for?
Yes, it's something that we are looking at very carefully at the moment with our team. Not just for Big Fraser's sake, but these customised gloves that are starting to get introduced. The word customised, the fact that they're different, you've got to look at it. And as I say, I'm not going to get too much into it because it's an ongoing process, but during the week, we were warned repeatedly by Fraser's team around what gloves could be being used, and that's no excuse. Fraser lost the fight fair and square. It's the damage that can cause, and that will have to be looked at.
So now all of a sudden that the dust is settled, according to Ben Shalom, there's a glove situation. I didn't hear about any of this in the build-up of the fight. And you know that in boxing, word travels fast because it's a small world.
Everybody knows a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy that knows something.
Ben claims that he was told repeatedly about Fabio Wardley's customized gloves in the build-up of the fight. I don't remember hearing anything.
Did you?
When he's talking to the guy, he's not looking into the camera, he's looking down, averting his eyes. I don't trust Ben Shalom, and I don't put it past him.
What?
One of his star fighters just got stopped in one round in what was supposed to be a very big fight for him, a very big fight for Boxer. In a manner of speaking, had Frazier won,
That would have been big for him.
Fabio baptized this guy. Beat him easy, where the first fight was a brawl.
This one wasn't.
And I don't put it past Ben Shalom that in order to save face for Big Fraze, in order to save face for his fighter, he could and would manufacture a controversy where there isn't one. Because it's my understanding that the gloves that are going to be used in a fight are inspected beforehand. There's an entire process.
They pick the gloves they're gonna use.
The specific gloves, the actual gloves that are going to be used in the fight. They're not pulling gloves out of a bin.
They're not buying them from Dick's Sporting Goods or Modell's.
Amazon Prime. The specific gloves that are going to be used in the fight are picked, they are examined,
Approved.
used, then they are collected afterwards, sealed, and handled by the presiding alphabet people.
The alphabet organizations or whatever commission is overseeing the event, overseeing the fight, you know how it goes. There's an entire process. So that Ben could come out a few days later talking about a glove situation? What situation?
And so, I don't put it past him that he could manufacture a controversy, put a spin on Frazier Clark being stopped the way he was stopped to help that fighter save face and salvage his career.
Well, you know, Fabio, he was using dodgy gloves.
Custom gloves with sketchy padding or whatever it is. I think of Ben Shalom as being a bit of a weasel, and maybe he has to be because he has a lot on his plate and a lot to compete with. So he does whatever he has to do, for better or worse, out of necessity.
But a weasel still.
Doing whatever he needs to do, Fabio hit his guy so hard. People were scared that Frazier was going to retire after that fight, but Frazier Clark has insisted he will not be retiring from boxing following his knockout defeat to Fabio. I hold my hands up. My team did a fantastic job. It was my mistake and it costed me. My pride is still dented now. But the fighter in me knows that I will be back. I'm 33, but I'm in my prime. I'm the fittest now I've ever been in my whole career. So I'm not looking for it to be over. If anything, it is just a blip in the road.
He's a good guy.
The beauty of the British boxing scene is you don't necessarily need to be a world-level guy to make world-level money.
Take Chris Eubank. He ain't worth big bucks in America or someplace else, but in the UK, he can make some coin.
Frazier builds himself back up. Maybe he can get in line for some good domestic level fights.
You know.
But all this stuff about Fabio's gloves, like I said, fight week. In the build-up of the fight, I didn't hear anything about any glove scandal.
Maybe I missed it, did you?
Now, as far as Fabio and what's next for Fabio is welcomed a potential fight with former WBC champion Deontay Wilder next, saying, I'd happily back myself against him because ultimately it's a battle of the bombs and it's on who can land first. Of course, he'd welcome a fight like that when Wilder's coming off a knockout loss to Zhilei Zhang and a lopsided decision loss to Joseph Parker. Being honest, that's a good developmental fight for Fabio Wardley. That would be a good acid test.
In keeping with the kind of developmental fights that a fighter must go through before he reaches world level, facing a former world champion.
It's not a bad shout. It's not a bad idea, and I don't hate the fight. If they made it, I'd watch it, but I don't know that Wilder has anything left, anything else to give to the sport of boxing.
I don't know if he's gonna come back.
But Fabio mentioned him, said he's open to a fight with him. I saw Frank Warren make the suggestion that Fabio should fight America's own Jared Anderson, which we talked about.
Another American fighter that's coming off a loss.
I saw that His Excellency Turki El-Sheikh plans on making the second installment of Queensberry vs. Matchroom 5 for 5, February 22nd. He said they may have another show in May, and he wants to make Chris Eubank versus Conor Benn a separate matter. It's the Matchroom versus Queensberry rematch that has my attention. So what if Fabio Wardley fights on that show?
Who would he fight?
Johnny Fisher, maybe? The Romford Bull? Not a bad idea. Not necessarily a great one either. Fabio is a bit further along than Johnny Fisher is.
Justice Hooney?
That's better. Remember, Fabio Wardley is a Queensbury Promotions fighter now. Justice Hooney's with Matchroom. You could put Justice Hooney in there with Fabio. If Frank is willing, if Frank wants to, and Fabio.
Why wouldn't they?
Because Fabio has kind of already rolled the dice 2 times already. 3.
He didn't have to fight David Adelaide. He didn't have to fight an unbeaten up-and-comer like himself. He chose to do that. And he didn't have to fight a standout amateur, an Olympian, in Frazier Clark. He didn't have to do that either.
Frazier Clark win, the Frazier Clark knockout, is a career best win for Fabio Wardley. And now they might want to pump the brakes, take things a little slower.
He's on the cusp.
On the right track, en route to becoming one of the bigger draws in British boxing. So do you really want to chance it in Riyadh? Do you really want to chance it in a Matchroom versus Queensbury rematch?
I don't know.
I feel like Fabio Wardley is the living embodiment of one of those cliches. You know, there's a lot of cliches in boxing. Some make sense. How some guys got it and some guys don't. Fabio Wardley doesn't come from a deep amateur background. He's just got a couple of white-collar fights.
But he's got it.
Whatever it is, he's got it. More of it than David Adelaide had of Frazier Clark.
He's got it.
Some of these suggestions that they're making, they're not bad suggestions, but they're not likely to happen either. A Wilder fight, a Jared Anderson fight. I think a more sensible and sensical fight.
Joe Joyce.
You're willing to fight 2 Americans from across the pond that are coming right off of losses. Joe Joyce is coming right off a loss to Derek Chisora. Did you forget? Is he still with Queensbury? Because if he is, you can make that.
Is it risky? Mildly risky fight. It is.
Joe Joyce is very persistent and prolific within a round. He's going to throw punches and bunches. He's not going to stop coming after you. You have to stop him from doing that or do your best to hang tough.
It's a good acid test.
Fabio Wardley is comparatively faster and more explosive than Joe Joyce, perhaps not as persistent or consistent, but I think he cracks harder than Joe in terms of single punching power. They could do that.
Don't forget, Joe Joyce got sat on his back pocket by an aged Derek Chisora in his last fight. If Derek can explode on you like that, Fabio can explode on you like that.
Talking about a Derek Chisora in his 40s.
And the appeal of doing it for Frank, George, Queensbury is you've worked with Joe, you work with Fabio, shouldn't be too hard to make.
Right?
The alternative.
Forget Joe, forget Jarrett, forget Wilder, forget all of those guys. Take it easy.
What are you in a rush for?
You just gave 2 unbeaten fighters their first professional losses. Credible scalps.
Take a break.
Figuratively, I mean. Your next opponent doesn't have to be a difficult one. Your next fight doesn't have to be a big fight or a dangerous fight. It doesn't.
Take it easy on the next one and fight somebody more serious afterwards.
Remember that the world title picture is all jammed up anyway. Fury's got to fight Usyk again, and we'll see what happens with them. Whoever wins that fight, they might have to fight Daniel.
IBF champion.
If this is about being in a rush to fight for an alphabet title, you don't need to rush. There's a lot of things that need to happen first. So take your time.
Division's not going anywhere. It's not going to get up and leave, and most of the money that's there is for a British heavyweight anyway.
You're in the right place at the right time already, coming off of big wins. Relax.
Take it easy.